right, so we back at it again. We got Nathan from Spiritual Level of Being right here. It's his Twitter account, his Twitter handle. Check his information out. He's a bishop, very intelligent, from Australia. Got a lot of knowledge about Gnosticism. Very, very intelligent. Then we got Fear over here. Fear, very intelligent. Y'all already know him. He's part of the show that we do already. So Nathan, so you wanted me to name this Heroes, Messiahs, and Priestesses. Now that's an interesting title. That's an interesting title. Why did you want to pick that title, bro?
Well, there's a lot of mythology when it comes to rebels. History also includes ancient heroes, priestesses, and many of the priestesses today would be regarded as temple prostitutes, if you will, because of sex rituals, such as kings even having sex with this high priestesses, well, the high priestess basically of the temple, and it'll be symbolically representing a god marrying the goddess. And sometimes this priestess would even marry the king. This is interesting. The king will be anointed and granted his kingship, and this was also believed to bring about prosperity, good crops, good harvest, good weather. You're pleasing the gods of the weather, the gods of storms, gods of architecture, also the gods of archaeology, well, not archaeology, wrong word, farming, basically. So, yeah, metallurgy, stuff like that. And you're also on mute, Tyrone.
I wasn't talking, bro. I was reading this, but yeah, you agriculture, bro. Agriculture is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the word.
Agriculture. Yeah, definitely metallurgy. It's funny you say that because oh man, what's that dude's name? I can't remember his name now off the top of my head, but he wrote a book called Eden. Oh man, I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head, but he actually talks about that. I talk about him a lot, man. I have to look up the name.
I gotcha. Well, one also reason I want to discuss is because we have a lot of, not just in ancient times, but modern times, those who rebelled against authority would be mythologized or even demonized. We have Ned Kelly over here in Australia, a bush ranger sort of outlaw, now mythologized as a hero who was hung. He was being demonized at his time. You guys have Billy the Kid, mythologized as a hero.
Hey, you know what my saying is, bro? I have a saying, bro. When somebody gets crazy and tries to do that, rah bullshit, I'd be like, go ahead and be a Billy Bass if you want to.
Well, like even in ancient Rome, we had Spartacus too. He was leading an armed rebellion of armed slaves. He was a gladiator. Many of his followers were being gladiators and also slaves that were in rebellion. He was demonized during his time. They would all be crucified, and then later he's mythologized as a hero, praised for his tactics against Rome by even Romans. We had Egyptian mythology. Set kills his brother Osiris and takes his kingdom, and then his son Horus, being the son of Osiris, then beats Set, takes back his inheritance, his kingdom, and Set is humiliated and stripped of all his kingdom. And some other stories even killed, but most stories agree that he's been stripped of his rank, his right, as ancient kings did. They would take another king, subject them to under their authority, and then even educate their children their ways and set them under another kingdom as their vassal. We have Brythonic legends, Celtic, if you will, English even, of King Arthur fighting against the Anglo-Saxons. This in turn would inspire Welsh princes and kings in acts of rebellion, fighting the English crown to gain independence for Wales. So these figures have been crucial into many facts of fighting these ancient rebellions. We have in Judaism, Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt. This mythology leads to the Israelites having their own nation granted to them by God. So we later have the story of the Babylonians conquering the Jewish people, and then the Babylonians being conquered by Cyrus the Great, who forms the Persian Empire and is seen as a messiah figure because he rebuilds the temple and brings back the nobility, as it was mostly the nobility, the Hebrew-speaking Jews that were exiled, many of which were speaking Aramaic. During Jesus' time, there were Greek-speaking Jews that couldn't speak Hebrew. We had many speaking Aramaic or Greek. And even the Pharisees and Sadducees being even the Herodians, the nobility of the priesthood, they could speak Greek to communicate with their Roman overlords, in some cases even Latin, Aramaic. We had kings that were speaking all these multiple languages. So it's likely, very likely, that this act of Cyrus the Great returning back the Jewish people and rebuilding the temple would inspire later Messiah figures that would in turn be associated with rebellion to grant the Jewish people their freedom. So, or make their nation great, granting independence for the Jewish faith. Josephus of the 1st century, he was a Jewish man, so of the Jewish faith. He writes of rebel messiahs that he calls laestes, being predators, pirates, rebels, bandits even. So laestes was usually associated with the most violent of the violent. He would call these prophets false prophets, charlatans that would lead people astray and cause acts of rebellion. So we have, I written down some cases. The unknown Egyptian prophet. Now, this prophet, he led his followers to the Mount of Olives, which is where Jesus led his followers. Some people even believe that this unknown prophet, which him and his followers were attacked by the Romans, his fate is unknown. He possibly survived or was killed. Some people believe that this is Jesus or even Paul. And he's mentioned in the Bible, there's a Roman that then mistakes Paul for this Egyptian prophet and says, oh, you're not this prophet. You're not this Egyptian. I forgot exactly whereabouts that is. Then we have a Samaritan prophet also recorded by Josephus. And he promised to show sacred relics on Mount Gerizim. And he and his followers were massacred by Pontius Pilate, the same guy who apparently judged Jesus. Some people also associate this guy here with Jesus, which is interesting.
Yeah. Another one, I've read that earlier too. But I'm sorry to interrupt. I just read that earlier today.
It's interesting, isn't it? So we have some historical figures that could have also inspired the Jesus legend. So we also have John of Gishkala, and he was also called a laestes by Josephus. He was insulted. So he was a zealot. So that's a form of Judaism. He was a zealot leader, so leader of the zealot communities, and he was a warlord. So he records him as a zealot leader and warlord who took control of Jerusalem. So this is during the First Jewish War. And he was captured by the Romans and paraded through the streets as a trophy by the Emperor Titus, and then he was sentenced to life in prison. So taken as a trophy, basically paraded through the street saying, hey, this guy rebelled against Rome and lost. He's not a Messiah, and if he is your Messiah, we've got your Messiah, basically. So they would have promoted him as a Messiah figure by the Jews saying, we have your Messiah. We have your hero. So we rule you. And if you look at even old cases of wars, we would have other kingdoms taking other kingdoms' God as a trophy, and then these other kingdoms would have to pay a ransom back to receive that said pagan idol or idol of a god or goddess, which is interesting, almost like, what's the word, where you got people stealing mascots,
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Because in the military, they take guidon flags and stuff like that.
Going back to ancient practices of people taking people's gods. Even the black stones of Mecca were once taken by another kingdom and used as toilet latrines, and then the Muslims would have to pay it back. So, this stuff happened. Jesus was also seen as someone rebelling against authority. So Josephus apparently records him as a good man, but this is later accounts. This is edited by 2nd century Christians, and later in the 3rd and 4th century recorded by recorded by Eusebius of the 4th century. So, a bit dodgy there. I don't think he would have liked Jesus because he was of the Pharisee traditions, and the Pharisees, many of which rejected Jesus. Also, we had different forms of Judaism. So Josephus did not really like the Essenes rejecting Yahweh because they worship El Elyon. He did not like that they rejected the temple as corrupt. So he would have rejected Jesus as seeing them as corrupt. Also worshiping El and calling Yahweh the devil, as we find John 8:44. We have some Essene groups that would have called Yahweh the devil, or even recorded him as a demiurge, or even Belial, which is like a demon basically, which would later be associated with Satan, as Christians would mix and mingle, as there was all these different versions of Christianity.
Wise men.
Yeah, wise men as well. The priesthood of the Zoroastrians. And we have these stories mingled in with Jesus. So Zoroaster, who was the prophet of Zoroastrians, he went out into the wilderness in the desert and fasted for 40 days. He was tempted by the Lord of Darkness to worship him instead of the Lord of Light, similar to Jesus being tempted by Satan. But we have a mentioning of this Satan and then the devil. So two different characters are in that story. So this would go to the tradition of, say, the Pharisees believing Satan served Yahweh. So he's recognizing Satan as basically adversary and a servant of the devil, basically, in his eyes would have been Yahweh. So very interesting. This is one reason why the Essenes were hated by many of the temple elite, because they worship a different god. They had different temple practices, such as they had community practices versus temple practices, I should be saying. But the temple can be your home. It can be yourself. It can be out in nature, which is what the Essenes were doing. They were practicing baptism. They practiced chastity, and they were thought as a strange of doing this. Many of them were even celibate men. They had women as leaders in some cases, not all though. Some were, again, were very male dominated. So we had different groups. And these different groups had, again, worshipping a different god, and some even worshipping Yahweh as a lesser god and son of El, which dates back to the Canaanites. And even the Canaanites, they in turn were vast in their faith. Some were peaceful that worship El Elyon and would even be vegetarians, rejecting all forms of sacrificing, which would arguably be ones responsible for forming the Essene movements. So not all were violent people. The Bible records them as eating shellfish and being homosexual, basically. This is not true. So the Jewish people are basically insulting their own ancestors because they want to completely split themselves away from an old religion. So they had the belief of, in the ancient past, your race was decided upon your religion in some cases, your culture. It wasn't because of your skin color, it was your religion, it was your culture. And I also want to describe some priestesses. So the Canaanites, which also early Judaism was polytheistic, so we had the belief of El having the wife of Asherah, and even in some cases El and Asherah being one being. So we had temple virgins in ancient Judaism as well, which is something I want to mention too. They were young girls raised from 3 to 14, given to the temple, and these girls were expected to give birth to the Messiah or be holy brides, basically, married off to only the nobility. But this wasn't originally the case. They were meant to be donated as priestesses, raised as nobility, but Judaism would become male-dominated. This is why many would reject the practices, why Jesus whipped them as lay-stace, and why children are shouting to him, save us. In Matthew 21:12 to 17, they use the word Hosanna, which means save us. So they're asking Jesus to save them. Why are children there in the temple saying save us? Why are doves being sold, which are also associated with temple virgins? This is what's really going on. So these are child brides. This Talmud also records young boys being abused too. So there's some nasty shit that went on in these temples. And this is one reason Jesus challenged it, and one reason the Essenes even challenged it. So regarding them originally being priestesses, priestesses were also sometimes associated as temple prostitutes. Sometimes they would be regarded as the same thing. Now, this is not so much the same in Judaism, but they would be married off to nobility. So there was some cases of priestesses marrying kings. Now, in the Canaanite groups where they had temple priestesses, we had them recorded as the most beautiful of women, and Greeks and all people from different nations were visiting these Canaanite women so far as Carthage to give them lavish gifts. Why? For seeking divine favor of the gods, of a goddess. And they would sometimes see the goddess being in human form as the priestess herself. Not in all cases. Sometimes the children born out of the sex rituals of these unions of males and females, being the kings or nobility with the priestess, were seen as divine children. Sometimes they would sleep with a random person that was, or a warrior, if you will, and that was received as giving birth to a demigod. These priestesses were also associated with healing. They would heal the soldiers with drugs, with sex as well, a touch of a woman, to calm down the lust of blood. So the lust of blood, I was meant to say, to calm down their bloodlust. So some cases with this calming down of the male, we would now recognize some of these cases as PSD. So the males needed treatment because they were ready to fight another war, and sometimes given opium in order to heal, calm down, and ready to fight again.
Man, that's crazy, man. You know, that's a lot of information, man. And you know, you don't find none of that in the Bible. You know, you don't find that unless you go researching the words, the actual words, right? I always talk about it. I know people make fun of me all the time in Twitter spaces, bro, and X spaces. They always make, oh, here he comes with the etymological dictionary, and here he comes with the definitions. It is because I always say that, you know, when you pick up a book, you know, probably 85 to 95% of the words, right? The rest that you don't know, you know, sometimes you just let it gloss over. I'd like to, I literally, bro, I get one right here right now. I actually keep a little small dictionary with me at all times, especially when I'm reading a book that's hardcover, right? Because there's words in there I do not understand. And I hear people use big words all the time, and I don't understand what they're saying. So I had come in here because I keep it simple, stupid, bro. I was in the military, man. Keep it simple, stupid. As you know, I say the most simplest words to make it as easy as I possibly can. Maybe that's a bad choice of words in this day and age, but it helped me along my journey. So when you said,
kiss it, soldier, kiss it.
yeah. So when you said, Nathan, that the word means save us,
Yep.
what made you look up that actual word to find out what it meant?
To see what it meant. Same sort of thing as you. Like if I come across a word I don't know, I want to know what it means. So I went into what it meant. I looked up the Hebrew. So there's in the Bible, there's a mixture of Greek and there's some Hebrew words being used, in some cases Aramaic.
Yeah, 100%.
So pretty interesting. So we have different authors being combined into one text. It also can suggest as well, which is very supportive of Jesus himself, Yeshua, Yehoshua, Yeshu, whatever you like to call him, spoke different languages.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because when you go back and look at Adam, Jesus was considered the second Adam.
Yep.
Right? And Adam, it means mankind. It means man. It could be human. So you just have to take those words and plug it into its, you know, in the sentences. So like what I like to do is, so if I read a sentence, right, and there's a word that I don't understand, right, I would look up that word. And if it has different meanings to it, then I would use those different words to see if that same sentence will make sense. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I don't have an example right now to give the ones that doesn't, but mankind, and human, and Adam could all mean the same thing, depending on, for one, the theologian you're talking to, right? And the person that translated it, right?
Yeah.
But also I learned that, and this is for me and Nathan being authors, and Fear is about to release a cookbook, so be on the lookout for that. Hey, do you have a title for that yet?
The sarcastic chef. I don't know. That's just an idea, but I'm floating around with that, like something along those angles. But I don't know. I'm thinking dry soup and wet comedy. I don't know.
So be on the lookout for that. But you know, like I said, I want to know what each word means, and if it makes sense, then it makes sense. If it doesn't, it's okay. But being authors and stuff like that, you know, you try to be very careful with your words, right? And if you're an upcoming author who doesn't have money for somebody to edit your stuff, you're going to do it the best way you can, right? And sometimes we translate things on how we understand it, right? And when we read it ourselves, we feel like, yeah, that makes sense, but to somebody else that might not make sense. So sometimes it's good for people to come and ask the person what they wrote. So even though we can't go back to the old days and ask the people who wrote what was ever said in these texts, it's important to use the words that are actually used back then, because transliterations messes up a lot of stuff. A lot of people like them take a letter out and replace it with another letter, and then replace it with another letter, and then you got another word, like you said, Jesus, Yeshua. You know what I'm saying? And then you got to remember the letter J didn't come around to around somewhere in the 1500s. I can't remember the exact date, but it's a brand new word, right? Yeah, that's right. So the word before that, then the word before that, and then the spelling before that, and it confuses people. And then you get like
it's mostly being used, you know.
Yeah, and great. Yeah, and then what happens is you get a mixture of different people within there. And this is my point that I was trying to make. So when you was talking about Jesus, right? I always talk about this. I always say that there is a place in Japan named Shingo Village, Shingo, I guess, Village. It was a place where it's supposed to be the gravesite of Jesus Christ. And then somewhere else on there is the Virgin Mary somewhere. I can't remember exact word, but I always talk about Jesus Christ. So the idea is that, and I've read this in Albert Pike's book too, if anybody knows who that is. They say that Jesus Christ might possibly didn't different people say that he possibly didn't die, that he wasn't crucified, and that the story is allegory, right? And there are people saying that he went to Japan, and he got married and had kids. So now we have two different descriptions of a Jesus, right? We have the one that survived, that never got crucified, and the one that got crucified. So, but are they the same person? And that's a good question to ask, right? Because if we're a follower of Christ, we want to know the actual truth. What just made it in the Bible doesn't. The Bible is a selection of different books put into there.
All from the 2nd century as well, if we're regarding the New Testament. Pauline letters, and that's meant to be older than the New Testament. They are for the 2nd century. We don't have the 1st century originals. So this goes for all to say. Any text we have basically regarding Christian, this doesn't matter if it's canon or not. Most of them can be regarded as 1st century. So when people go, oh, it's not authentic, it's because it upsets their version. Because the Catholic Church went around burning everything else, so that way they had their dogma. And even their dogma, which they used, was basically stolen from Marcion and stolen from Gnostics. Marcion was a type of Gnostic Christian, the first Christian to compile together the first Christian New Testament, 200 years before the Catholic Church. So Gnostic Christianity, 1st century, right? Catholicism, 2nd century. Orthodoxy, 4th century. Protestantism, 16th century. New denominal or non-denominal Christianity, 18th century. So they're all ignoring the things. Another thing I don't get is we have Hitler do a mass murder. We recognize what he did was evil, but can people completely ignore the fact that the Catholic Church did even bigger genocide to the Gnostic Christians? And it goes over their head. So what makes a bunch of murderers and also ones who were conducting orgies correct compared to someone that was non-violent following the messages of Jesus? This is what I don't get within Christian orthodoxy. They don't look at their own history. They don't look at the violence of their religion, the murder, the rape that was done in the name of God, their God, which the church fathers compiled together and stated, okay, our God is loving, just, and vengeful. When we had early Christianity rejecting this idea, stating God was only just and loving, or you had the idea there was duality. But this is different. You had the idea of even angels creating the earth and thus not being perfect. So all these different beliefs. If we go to Simon Magus of the 1st century, he was baptized by a disciple of Jesus. He was a student of Philip, baptized by Philip. That's importance, and the Catholic Church reject him. They even state, he was running around with a prostitute. Never mind the fact that he rescued her from sex slavery, and then she rose through the ranks, and then he later married her. Never mind that fact. He's worse than Satan, which is fucked, because he and his followers were promoting equality and rescuing children from brothels. Catholic Church would later run those brothels as they went in with Rome. Not originally, though. That was not the original case. So Simon Magus believed that Yahweh was the demiurge and a fallen angel, and out of basically rebellion, the angels, being kind of fallen angels in this case, create the earth, which is strange. This is different. This is not unknown to Judaism, as some Jews did believe the angels created the earth under the orders of the Most High God. So in this story, it's done out of rebellion. Then we have the idea of Jesus with Simon Magus being a regular human, and that he was basically deified in flesh and in spirit, but kind of adopted by God during the baptism, similar to the Ebionites and Essenes, which would convert into Ebionites and Nazarenes. So, because Essenes weren't Christian, they're Jewish. So Jesus then is who loved so much by God. Spirit is raised up and becomes the Logos, replacing Moses as God's word, but become the begotten Son. So this is different, though, because in Simon Magus' belief, he believes that we all can do this, though Jesus is the greatest one. So deified, literally. So the shepherd, if you will, that guides the way to souls of humanity. So a ransom, if you will. So early sacrifice of your sin, not sacrifice for your sin, but rather a sacrifice to ransom your soul, to raise it and return it to the Most High God. So basically, these angels that are trying to create us are trying to reflect the image of God. So when they create the earth, they're trying to, and basically the heavens or whatever, they're trying to replicate higher heavens. So they're trying to replicate or copy something. So that's the original story of that belief, which we can find something similar with the Essenes. Different groups of Essenes, many of which were apocalyptic, believing there was going to be a battle between evil angels and good angels. So it's very bizarre when you look at ancient Jewish and Christian beliefs, as they were vast and different. So if you have all these different sects of Judaism, that means we have possibly different forms of a Jesus. What Jesus is which? What Jesus belonged to? What group? He wasn't a Pharisee. He wasn't a Sadducee. One reason he wasn't a Sadducee is because Sadducees, well, they didn't believe in angels. Jesus did. They didn't believe in an afterlife. Jesus did. That's interesting. They didn't believe in a Messiah figure. Jesus was seen as a Messiah figure. They viewed anyone that was a Messiah as being a troublemaker, being a rebel. The Pharisees, they rejected Jesus. They believed Satan served Yahweh, but they accepted 24 books, but they also rejected other stuff too. They didn't baptize themselves. They only washed their hands and washed their face, basically. It was very rare they ever got baptized. It was only during a severe
actual. It was dirty?
Yeah, basically. So Jesus was regularly baptizing. Him and his followers were regularly getting baptized, just like the Essenes were.
Hey, you know, talking about washing, look, so you already know I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I can tell you, bro, I am not kidding. They wash their hands and feet a lot with just regular water. I mean, they would be in the middle of working, right? And if it's time to pray, they're washing their feet and their hands.
Yep.
If they're about to eat, of course, they wash their feet and hands. If they're about to, and these were Iraqis and Afghanistan. This is Iraq and Afghanistan. And these people would, let's say, like, they took a break, right? Say, like, you get, like, you know how we get 30 minutes to an hour break at our jobs or whatnot. They would take that time. First thing they would do is wash their hands and wash their feet. Yep. Like, these people were, I mean, it's so crazy that people look at them. Use so many derogatory words to them when these people are clean and they're faithful to their beliefs, right? They live up to their beliefs, right? And they have different sects, just like Christianity and so on and so forth.
So what you just mentioned there, that's what the ancient Jews were doing. They were just washing their hands and feet, right? What made the Essenes different is they would wash their whole body. So, but not they wouldn't just wash their hands all the time when they were eating. They would go off first thing, basically wash their whole body. Then they would only wash their hands and feet during prayer, not all the time during eating, unless it was a prayer feast, which is some reason why the Jews even insulted Jesus. So unless they were doing prayer feast, they would wash their hands. If they weren't, they wouldn't, which is what they were insulted for. So, which is very interesting as well. And when
I wonder why they would make fun of Jesus when he himself had his feet washed.
Why what, Fear?
I said, I wonder why they would make hold that against Jesus, like even if himself he had his feet washed.
Yes, but when he was being anointed then as a Messiah, so they didn't like that, which is what Essenes were doing, anointed their own Messiahs, even the Zealots did. But in regard, what I was going to mention before, it was really cool as well. Shit.
No, take your time. Just think back for a second. So, to me, it's just, like different people had their different ways of doing things, and that's okay. But like you said, Jesus also had people wash his feet with their hair, bro. Yep. I'm always going to say this shit. I'm always going to say this. And Go ahead.
Baptism. What Christians don't think of today, they think of just being dunked in a bathtub. You would be out in the river, many of which were naked, getting dunked underwater. People going shouting like this. In deep prayer as well, speaking in tongues. This is during the John the Baptist movement. People got freaky. And then they were placed on a white robe after to symbolize the rebirth, purification, holiness, cleansiness. This was what separated them from other Jewish people that also looked down in some cases of nakedness. Jesus stayed and tramp over your clothing like little children, being baptized, then put on the white cloak. So this is what's going on, what many people ignore. And this also goes back similarly with these priestesses, doing this to nobility, to the kings. So in Mesopotamia, I wrote down this, the kings of Uruk would sleep with the high priestess, and this was viewed as symbolic marriage between the gods and would ensure good harvest and prosperity. This was known as the Helios Gamos, sacred marriage, between 3000 to 2000 BC. And sometimes those priestesses would physically marry the king, and this was seen as a uniting of the god and goddesses, such as even Enki and... Anu? Or Anu? No, Enki's the son.
Enki's the son. Anu's the father. Well, some people believe Anu is the father.
So father and mother, what they are.
Let's see. what I was going to say about that is Inky, and a lot of people believe Inky and Enlil were brothers at one time, or are brothers. But there are texts, and the person that I was talking about when I was mentioning agriculture and stuff like that way back like 15 minutes ago, I just remembered is Anton Parks. He wrote the book Eden, and that's when he goes into the idea that the gods, Inky in particular, gave Eve the knowledge for metallurgy. Well, metallurgy can be used for what? Life and death. How can it be used for life and death? Well, life is by agriculture, death is by the weapons that comes from it, right? And so he talks about that. I actually posted that a lot on X. I'll probably bring it up after this, after I stop talking. But it's funny to me that you mentioned that they will go to the river and wash their bodies, right? And that would be their baptism, and they will put a white cloak on, or cloth, or a linen, or whatever people would like to call it. But I remember, and I can't remember where I learned this from. I don't know if it's from a book or a documentary, because I just remembered it now. But there used to be a time where you can see someone's cleanliness by the way they treat their white clothes or their white linen or whatever. So if it was dingy looking, they knew that you wasn't very clean, right? Because you didn't take the time to clean your linen the right way. And I can't remember where I've read that from or seen it. It feels like I seen it in a documentary rather than reading. Did you hear something like that?
Yeah, I've heard something like that. I want to ask you as well, who is Anu or wife?
Anu?
Yeah, who was his wife?
Who is his? Oh shoot, what his wife? Man, they have so many different names, bro. I have to look it up. So I'm also gonna do two things. I'm gonna bring up a website that I always use about Mesopotamia and their gods, because it's the actual names. It goes back to the actual what is used. If anybody was to ever learn the cuneiform tablets and stuff. I can't remember. I'm about to pull it up right now, man. Man, there's so many. The Anunnaki names, they have so many different names that
you got Anu, and then you got Ki, and to make Anunnaki. So I think that's one name. Iana is another one too, maybe, or might be the daughter.
Inanna, yeah, that was his granddaughter.
One of them. No.
And Lou, I think, is his son.
No, Inanna was his granddaughter. Ishtar, she's also known as Ishtar. She's also known as the Virgin Mary, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Inanna, yeah. And she's also known as another name too. I'm trying to look up this.
One reason I wanted to mention them is because with the story of Anu, he was meant to be the father god. We have stories of even Enki replacing him as the father god, and even taking on his mother as wife as well. So we look at the Canaanite pantheon, we have a similar story with Yahweh and Baal. In both cases, we have either Yahweh basically inheriting, say, Israel, for instance, and inheriting the father's kingdom, and then we have Baal doing the same, or even taking it by force, basically, from El. So we had all these different variations. So even that's the reason I want to mention that as well. So these were also seen as kingly adoptions, and this was even reflected in sex rituals, anointing rituals as well, when they would anoint them as well. So anointing for kingship, one king replacing another king. This was also replicated in their religion. There's a theory, and I like it as well, that some of the Sumerian kings got mythologized as their gods, which could be a thing as well, which is interesting.
Okay, I think I found the website. This is the website that I use. Hold on, let me bring it up for you guys. I use this website a lot. It's basically has all the list of names of all the Anunnaki gods, and they're
that's a shit ton.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's why I said that there's so many different. And what's so funny about it is that the names are different than what we know, as far as like, because most people know the Sitchin ones, even though he uses a specific name for each one. But this right here is like the bread and butter right here. This is like the bread and butter. So he's usually right here. It says it right here. He's usually he's the father of the gods, and many deities are described as his children in one context or another. Inscriptions from the 3rd millennium Lagos named An as the father of Gatnduk, and then Baba and Ningusu. In later literary text, Adad, Inki, Enlil, Gira, Nana, San Nogel, and Sarah also appear as his son. So in the beginning, Inki, and that's what I wanted to tell you about. Inki and Enlil wasn't always known as his son. Sometimes one of them are known as the father, either one. And then and that's why I wanted to look up the names, because while Goss, and I think, he also married in some texts, he also married Inanna too. So that's probably where you get that idea from. But
also different sects in the evolution of the religion as well. So that's replicated in that with names too. So names would evolve and change.
Yeah. So and this that's why I said so in 2144 in Lagos, a temple to Anu was established by Gudea, right? And that's where I guess they get the idea of Anu, because Anu is not really written anywhere. They said he's really not mentioned at all. It's only like maybe I can't even give you a number on how many tablets he's on. But yeah, this website right here, bro, is the bread and butter. See, remember when I was talking about transliterations and stuff like that in words? Here's the written forms right here, and it tells you Sumerian and Akkadian is Anu, Anum, and Anu, and ANNU, and then normalized forms are the Anu, Anum, and it gives you all the text. I always talk about the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, like I always mention that, and then it gives you more reading and stuff like that. So this is actually this is supposed to be the bread and butter, along with the stuff from Oxford and so on, and not just Oxford, the British Museum and stuff like that. So it's crazy. So this is what you want to look for.
Yeah, it could be that God that also inspired El Elyon, the Most High God, of the Canaanites and also the Israelites, as he was also known as Father of the God. So it's likely this is where it came from as well. But something I want to regard too as well about priestesses, those who were literally trained in anointing, in medicine, because of their knowledge of potions, they were forbidden to own taverns, which is interesting. So because of their knowledge, they fear that they could poison people as well, and basically spells. People were very superstitious back then. But that tradition even carried on in Jewish law. They couldn't own taverns because of their knowledge on medicine. So I think that interesting, especially when you look at, say, Mary Magdalene, who's also regarded as Magdala from the town, but is also associated with towers, and those towers associated with pillars of a temple. And when she's got the scene that she's being cleansed of 7 demons, this doesn't mean demons. This means gods. So this was in association to what they would call pagan gods or Gentile gods, gods of the Gentiles, gods of the pagans, basically, more Christian term. But yeah, so this would mean a whole different story. So this meaning she would be a Canaanite priestess more than likely, as if she was the one funding the Jesus movement, this is how she would have received that. So she would have been a priestess. You have the scene of when Jesus is being crucified, her and the women are waiting to give assistance to Jesus if needed, basically. So that's interesting. So she's gone to the temple with spices, with myrrh, with aloe vera, stuff that could possibly heal. So it's showing that she's trained in medicine. So I reckon there was also an inside job as well when before you mentioned if Jesus didn't die as well. There's a chance of that. There were Christians that believed that he survived and lived a life and died later or was sent to heaven. There was the belief that he did die, but the spirit is what appeared before the disciples, which seems to be the earliest belief, as Simon Magus being a first century Christian baptized by the disciples. That's huge news, especially if he was a student of one of them. So that means he's received a teaching, a tradition passed on to him. And he believed that Jesus' soul was lifted up and became Logos, God's word and ultimate authority. So that meaning that it's the spirit that appeared before the disciples, not the fleshly body. So Jesus also rejected a lot of the material world as well. So I see that as more likely the case. I think he did die, and his spirit is what appeared before the disciples. So it's a matter of faith. You can see a loved one after death. Many people have. Who say this isn't how built Christianity. It seems to be a thing. But this also means that they see him as the ultimate word. So this is another religion impacted by the dying and rising gods. So it's interesting. It's still, they're carrying on a message which was useful for the time and even now. And that message was to be like Christ yourself, to be Christ-like. So Simon Magus even believed that you could be deified But this deified term is what people think. When people hear God, they don't understand this term as what he's referring to. He's not referring to the God. He's referring to you as basically a lesser God, so a hero. And this basically meant someone great, someone of renown, if you want to use this term. But his term of that was you being in control of your emotions and reaction to it. So when you have this reaction, you can change that emotion, you react perfectly to it, instead of being out of school and acting like a dickhead. I fail at that. That's fucking hard. So Simon Makers was seen as God because he could do that. And he was stating, this is Jesus' message. The ultimate transformation. Fucking wow. You know what I mean? Wow. That's impressive as shit. And that's what people lose. They're too lost in chasing the myth, not something that really perfects them. So if you actually look at something, this doesn't mean you're perfect, because if you go to teach of righteousness, he states when he was recorded as the Son of Man is not perfect. Jesus states to a woman that says, oh, you are good. Why do you call me good? Only God is good. So that meaning that belief was all goodness was manifestation of God. So when that states that you are God, it means that your goodness, that is a manifestation of God.
Yep.
So everything else is not. So only goodness is God. So that means nothing is good, truly, from that. So that's where our belief is. That's also extremist too. That's an extreme belief, it's extreme religion, if you will, too. It's peaceful. It's not violent in the sense of extremist, but it's a self-sacrificial belief of you sacrificing yourself to the greater good.
Yep. That's
what it's ultimately about. That's fucking hard, you know? And that's why I'm swearing right now to stress the definition of how hard that is.
Bro, hey, you should hear me in spaces, bro. People say I'm too crazy, man. They say I get mad too easy, and I'm just like, because I put mad hours in this shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I'm coming into, look, I don't care if people like me or not. Okay, I didn't pick up books and trying to gain knowledge for people to like me. My idea was to spread what I've learned, because all I've heard growing up, even now to this day, I want evidence. I want to know the truth. I want this. Okay, well, you got somebody in front of you who's putting that time in. And not only are they putting in the time, what you do the same thing that I do. We show our sources. We literally show our sources by any means necessary. And when you was asking about Anu and his wife, I know his wife was Antu, her name was, but I don't know what her name is according to this. And I was trying to find it because, like I said, they have different names, right? They have the Sumerian name, they have the Akkadian name, then they have the Hittite name, then they have, and I don't learn all the names. You know what I mean? I just know that he had a wife. I just got to find which name that they use. And it's not on this one right here that I can find. Huh?
I think you might have found her one of her names.
What do you mean?
Right here that you got.
Oh yeah. Well, this is what I brought up. So I know Inanna was also his granddaughter, Ishtar.
Yeah.
But she's known as
the mother goddess as well, and creator of humankind. So it's
Well, she's supposed to be married. Well, she's supposed to be the Virgin Mary, right? And the Virgin Mary is supposed to be whose wife? God's wife.
You know what I love as well about pulling up, bro, with all this? You're showing that from the beginning of religion, there was always different sects. So there's never one. And this makes things confusing because people always want to have there's one. The problem is there was never one.
Yeah. It is Antu Fear, but I'm saying it doesn't have her name on here as that. Okay. But they do have Ninma, Nintu, and then they have the mother goddess.
He was another one as well, maybe. Might have been.
Yeah. Well, see, this is what's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Are you looking at the ANTU or the ANTUM?
Yeah. Either. It's not in. It's right here. If you look right here, it's in alphabetical order. It goes Anuna, then it goes to.
I can't see that small. I'm on the phone.
Oh yeah, you're on your phone. Yeah, it's in alphabetical order. They don't have her name on here. Okay. Like I said, the Anuna / Anunnaki have a lot of different names. I mean, a lot of different names. So, but I know Inanna was supposed to be really, and that's why the text gets kind of confusing. On because even Samuel Noah Kramer, I've learned, he also in some ways uses his different ideas. Remember when I was talking about the vampire and stuff like that? So yeah, it's just, it could be Nidher Saga. I mean, it's just so many.
It seems like it's a mixture of Antu or Ki or even Urash.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I said I know her as Antu. because that's easier for me to remember. You know, when, like I said, I use the most simplest thing. I said it earlier, keep it simple, stupid to me. If you say Anu, then I'll be like, and two. How's and two? Well, Anu is one, and two, number two. So number two would be the wife. I'm not saying she'd be behind it. It's just for me to learn it that way. So that's how I remember it. But that's why I said I don't try to learn all the names, because there's so many different names, and then even the names with the descriptions change, right? Like, even though some people would say, you know, Ishtar and Nana are the same, they still have kind of different different types of stories. Even Gilgamesh has different types of stories. You know what I mean? Depending, like I said, it all depends on the translator.
You know, I actually wonder if there was any mystic, esoteric, or heretic groups, if you will, regarded by them as seeing the god and goddess as one. You know, almost like transgender sort of sex, or, you know, basically one. It wouldn't surprise me if there was like a little insider group like that. I wonder.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, but here, look, right here. Here's a perfect example. It says name and spellings, and this is for Ninmah. Not all the names of the mother goddess can be enumerated here. The most important ones are mentioned in the title to this entry. Other important names that also occur frequently in written record are Aru, Dingerma, and Ninher Saga. Right? So that's why I said Ninher Saga, because it's so crazy that you have different names, right, for them. I mean, it's because of the transliteration and stuff like that. So I say, as long as I know that Anu had a wife, because he supposedly created children, he had to have a wife, he had mistresses. He didn't just have a wife, he had a lot of mistresses too. I mean, there's texts out there that's saying that he you know, and you know what's so crazy? That Anuna gods also did some, I hate using the R word, but they actually did that.
There's a lot of religions as well, you know, even with the Canaanites. But, you know, with the regarding of the priestesses, they would also be symbolic for the, what's it called, consorts or concubines of the gods. So being a consort or concubine of the king, who is also seen as a reflection of, you know, being chosen by the gods, you know, or some cases be deified as well and live amongst the gods. So, you know, a lot of things back then for this sort of reason.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and you know, this is another website that I use. Here, I'm going to bring this up to you. This is another website. So this is the translations from the, you know, electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. I'm going to see. Let me see. Tell me if you can hear this. Can you hear it?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
All right.
I can see it though.
Yeah. So, so in those days, in the days when heaven and earth were created, in those nights, in the nights when heaven and earth were created, in those years, in the years when the fates were determined, when the Anuna gods were born, when the goddess were taken in marriage, when the goddesses were distributed in heaven and earth, distributed. Listen to those words. When the goddesses became pregnant and gave birth, when the goddesses were obliged to work for their food, for their meals, the senior royal descendant gods oversaw the work while the minor gods were bearing the toil. The gods were digging the canals and piling up the silt and Harali. Now that's that. Did you hear the words that
Ajuji at that point?
Say what?
Are they talking about the Ajuji at that point, the workers?
Nah, I could look that up real quick.
Yeah, you see a lot of Judaism in that as well. You can see where it's borrowed from as well. Even with the waters being mentioned, we have the waters above. We have the idea of God or gods predetermining human fate. We have that same belief with Judaism. Even the Essenes, a teacher of righteousness, believed that, you know, God designed all fates for all humans, already knew it. So that idea is very ancient, dating back to the Sumerians, probably even dating back to early tribal humans.
Yeah,
you know, before that, you know, so very deep.
Yeah, so look, you remember when I was mentioning Ninher Saga, right?
Yeah.
Well, her name is also Nama. That's another name that I know because it's supposed to be Enki's mother, right? Yeah. So that's another wife of of Anu, right? Another name at least, right? Or mistress. This is about the Igigi. This is about toiling though, because this is the, or not. I'm sorry. Yeah, because the creatures, your creatures are smashing there, and my son wake up. Please apply skill. Okay, so yeah, this is the skill where they wanted to start creating the God heavens. But like I said, if you go back to this tablet and just read what it says the goddesses were taken in marriage and were distributed.
Yep.
Distributed, man.
Even that idea from the idea of angels mixing in, the idea of the gods also having a role to play in creation too. Later on, shifted into the angels. When we find the Canaanite belief, we have all gods, just like Sumerians, being used. So all these religions would have borrowed from them, no doubt. These guys were the first to be writing this stuff down, But like even when you got the Greeks with writing their stuff, I noticed that I reckon the Greeks were jealous of the law of the Jewish people because the Greeks had their legends, but the Jewish people wholly believed in it and were willing to die for it, basically, So it's what separated them from other religions as well, because a lot of religions seen their stories. They don't always believe all their stories, they're seen them symbolic or something or honored for each town. And even the Sumerians or Mesopotamians, beliefs would vary from town to town. One town was seen as sacred from one god to the other.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that I like to go to the primary sources. You know what I mean? And you're really you know about the Christian religion, the Jewish religion, the Gnostic religion. Those things like the back of your hand, and that's what I feel like I know with the Sumerians, because I believe that they're just the Christian text is just, or the New Testament, the New and Old Testament, I feel like is just repeating what the Sumerians wrote in some way or another, fashion or form. And of course, since life continues, more things had to be added to it, right? Like I think the Protestant Bible has 66 books in there. Then the Catholic book has different amount of books in there.
You should also read this bit that's here, by the way, Tyrone. It'd be a good subject because it's mentioning about the creation of human, I believe, regarding the Sumerian text. You've got it just there, right there.
Yeah,
read that one out for people.
Which one? This part right here?
5 to 78 to 7982. Read it just down from there to there. It's interesting.
Yeah, 6. Okay, so it says 75 to 78 is 6. She fashioned one with neither penis nor vagina on its body. Enki looked at the one with neither penis nor vagina in its body and gave it the name Nebru Enuk. See, a lot of people don't know that. And I talk about that a lot too, but that goes over so many people's head. That I mentioned that so many times in spaces about Nibiru, and I got tired of it, and I don't want to put it in Twitter, because if you put it in the writing, your account can get shut down. I actually had that happen to me on Facebook. Like I put this passage in there from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature into Facebook, and my account made me delete the message because it said it was sexual. But I mean, they let all kinds of crazy shit get on Twitter and Facebook anyway. But you know what? I'm glad you pointed, and that's why I left it here so people could see it. A lot of people don't know that Enki looked at the one with neither penis nor vagina on its body and gave it the name Nebru. Your private parts were Nebru.
Yeah.
I say that so many fucking times, bro.
Yeah. Also, eunuchs were seen as sacred in the temple. This is one reason why it's reflected by their religion.
And this is one of the reasons why I get so pissed off, because I bring sources to the table. Literally, I bring sources to the table. I say you can go online and go to www.mesopotamiangods.com, and they take the text from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, which I've mentioned thousands of times, and even showed their book version on there. And people, and I'll go in there and be like, Nibiru is not a planet, right? I said it has more to do with sexual parts than it does with a planet. But in reality, it was named a city in Iraq, which could have been the place that what is related to what? Those words right there. And people don't get it. They tell me that I just want they say you just stirring up the pot. No, you guys want the truth. You want to know what Nibiru is? Every time you look at your private parts, just remember that was once called Nibiru. It literally says it says Nibiru eunuch, and I don't know what that
Nibiru or Nibiru.
A eunuch, that was what that scholar's possibly saying. That's why it's got the question mark. So because it hasn't got a penis or vagina as the gods are looking at it. So that would be also, that's possible. I agree with the possible part there of that, because they were very religious, the Sumerians. They weren't just some people. They were dedicated to inscribing that onto a fucking rock out of faith.
Okay.
You know?
So I looked up that word, that eunuch word, and it's because of castrated.
Yep.
A man who has been castrated.
Yeah, and they were very seen as like basically religious idols. Basically, they were holy men.
Okay, and here's the other one: one employed to guard the woman's living areas in an Asian court.
Yep, that's another reason. And it also happened in the Western society as well. They were placed to, watch over the virgins as well, so no one touched them as well. Yeah. So also some of the royal family, because some of those temple virgins were also nobility.
But my point is that I tell people that. And fear, to answer your question, Nibiru is known by the Sumerians as Nibiru. By the Akkadians, is known Nibiru.
Wasn't it, as you mentioned, also a city?
Huh?
Didn't you also mention there was a city as well?
Yeah, it's a city also known as Nippur, Nippur.
Yeah, we gone through that alleyway quite a few times in the past.
But I always bring up this when I get somebody that talks about, because I know most people won't even accept this, but it's literally an electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. I mean, I go straight to the top. I'm telling you, it says the source, which I have the book. These are the individuals. It says electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. So I'm telling people, all you got to do is read the text. When people say Nibiru was a crossing planet, that could have I'm just like, man, where?
From an idea of a afterlife coming from an earlier idea of association of that city being chosen by one of the gods. That's where I reckon that idea probably came from. But as you mentioned, it's mostly sexual. And I say it's not all the combinations of those, But yeah, I agree with the more sexual part. That's fucking cool. So especially when you look at the ancient part, that's what was going on. A lot of sex was involved with religion. So that just screams sex to me. So, So
that's what I'm saying. Some people worship Enki, but Enki wasn't he wasn't somebody to be worshipped. Yep. And we know Enlil was not somebody to be worshipped. But people would say, some people would literally.
So yeah, God's got people one to another. Sorry,
I've heard people. No, you cool, bro. I've heard people say that Enki is God, and I'm like, that's not somebody you want to consider a god. Enki is not somebody you want to consider a god.
Same with Yahweh. They're very similar.
But that's what I'm saying, and I've always said it, man. The only God that I can relate to is the God of War, and you know who that is, right? You just said it.
Yahweh.
Yeah. And the only reason why is because I've been to war. I know that you have to be I don't even know if there's a word for it. But that's not the God that you should be worshiping and saying that's a good and loving God, because Yahweh was not a loving God.
Yeah, that's right. You also want to mention as well, and you've seen it on my text before about the Sashu, the Egyptian troublemakers that were worshipping Yahweh. They're the first recorded as worshipping. So as far as scholars know, that's the very first people to worship Yahweh, as well as calling themselves the Yahweh of Shashu, so Shashu of Yahweh. That's showing that they're calling themselves people of this God. Well, they were raiders and pretty much were regarded now as sex traffickers, because they were stealing Ethiopian girls and Egyptian girls, which were teenagers back then. Women weren't the same age as what they are regarded as now in a lot of these cases, especially when you talk about virgins. So they would take these virgins and marry them and also sell them as well. They would also provide Egyptians with slaves, selling it to them, and they themselves were also taken by the Egyptians as slaves because they kept raiding them for women. So what's interesting about this group is they were mercenaries. So Egyptians also used them as mercenaries, but who used them as mercenaries are Hyksos. And a lot of El worship wasn't always, a lot of it was peaceful. So these peaceful, loving guys were hiring these nasty bastards to do their fighting for them. Not in all cases. The Hiscots were willing to go to war. They ruled Egypt. They mostly ruled it peacefully. So that's interesting. So we have got cases of people that weren't as prone to war compared to another culture, hiring a culture that was more prone to war as mercenaries.
Yeah.
You
know, I know this text like the back of my hand. If you notice how easy it is for me to scroll and find when I do, what I used to do a long time ago is I used to use Control F a lot, right, on the computer. You know, you could type in the hidden word or the keyword and then go look for the word in the document. But remember, I was talking about Nipper, right, and Nibiru and stuff like that. Well, this is what it looked like.
Wow, damn impressive.
Oh, damn, that's small as hell. Shit.
I can still see it though, but wow, just the glimpse of it built on the mountain like that. Wow, you know, that was fortified. That's civilization, man.
Yeah, and it says right here, it says, look, you do not dwell in heaven. Okay. This is what it says. Look, you do not dwell in heaven. You do not dwell on earth. You do not come out to look at the land. Where you do not dwell, but where my house is built, your words cannot be heard. Where you do not live, but where my city is built, I myself am silenced. My city is ruined. My house is destroyed. My child has been taken captive. My child has been taken captive. Okay?
That's happened with kings as well.
No, hold up. Now hold up. This is what I want y'all to. This is what I wanted to read. Okay, I wanted to make sure that I was going to get to the part that I read crazy. So it says, I am a fugitive who has to leave the Eker Enlil's temple residence in Nibiru, or Nipper, or also known as Nibru. Even myself could not escape from your hand. Inky replied to Nima, who could change the words that left your mouth? Remove Yumul from your lap. Ninma, may your work be. You, for me, what is imperfect, who can oppose this? The man whom I shaped after you, let him pray. Today, let my penis be praised. May your wisdom be confirmed. Listen to that.
Yep.
Today, let my penis be praised. May your wisdom be confirmed. This is what Inky replied to Ninma. So Inky wanted individuals to praise his penis.
Yep. Some people in ancient Judaism did the same with Yahweh, praising his penis, and even came like with El Elyon. Stayed in how.
Listen. Hold up. Listen. This I want you to see. I want to see if you're going to get this because I ain't finished. Hold up. Let me read that part again. Today, let my penis be praised. May your wisdom be confirmed. May the Nincome proclaim your glory, my sister. The heroic strength, the song, the writing, the gods who heard, let Yumul build my house. Ninma could not rival the great Lord Inky. Father Inky, your praise is sweet. That's crazy. And there's the, I guess this is the cylinder, or it could be the tablet. I'm not sure exactly because it's just a drawing of it.
Is that one regarding sun being taken?
But but just that's crazy. Inky wanted individuals to praise his penis.
Yeah.
And you can find that in a lot of gods in Mesopotamia.
Yeah, that's one reason why ancient women and sometimes men would rub giant penis statues too, you know, for good increase their fertility to give birth, you know, which is bloody crazy. You know, they would also go to the extremes of wearing stuff like that. You know, some women would wear penis jewelry, some men even too, you know, to say, I am fertile, you know, or I give good seed, you know, so.
But,
so it is hilarious. But even the mentioning before about the sadness bit with the child being taken, that's probably reflection of a king. I would say that's probably been passed on and mythologized because they did take a child of a said king and said, all right, we raise him in our courts, or it was taken as a hostage so that way that kingdom wouldn't go to war, or that vassal would be totally loyal to their now lord, and that child be raised in their tradition and then be ruling over the city-state as their vassal, you know. So they would have reflected that on their religion, no doubt.
Yep. So listen. So I'm really like I'm telling you, I'm very, very knowledgeable on this website. I know on the side where to go for what I'm trying to talk about because, like I said, I don't know what happened, bro. I got knocked in my head in Afghanistan by a rocket, so I feel like that for some reason helped me pinpoint or memorize certain things. I forget small things, but like I don't know what it is. I feel like it's like how some people learn a new language. But let me read this part for you. Okay, it says, and this is why I say Enki is not a good god. It says Enki stayed with Ninsar for a while because he knew his seed could be her womb. So he stayed with her until the 9th day. When Ninsar gave birth to Ninkura, another girl child, the future goddess of mountain pastures. Sadly, Ninsar realized that although she had been passionately loved by Enki for a time, there was a longing in his eyes, his body, and soul she could not satisfy. So that's why I say he also had different
I wonder, is there any text? I'm pretty sure there is somewhere that the head of the council, of the divine council, tells off the other gods.
That do what now?
There's somewhere, I don't know where, that is reflected also. You can find something similar in Psalms 82, which I was going to read later. But somewhere in the it might be Babylonian, don't quote me. It might be Mesopotamian or the Sumerians or Akkadians, is it? That recorded the supreme god in a council telling off the other gods, basically. So giving orders in a sense. I don't know if that was during the flood or not. But yeah, I want to read something as well, Tyrone, and it reflects something that shows the divine council in regarding to ancient Judaism. One reading is from the Dead Sea Scroll version, and you have the Elohim being El Elyon in this case. So you have, being mentioned in two cases. You have Elohim being either the sons of God, or you have being mentioned as the God, depending. This one's reference to the God because that's a capital and the way it begins the text. So we have here El Elyon telling off all the other gods. And I reckon it's also reflected from these earlier tales because, as you mentioned before, Enki was not a good god. Yahweh was not a good god either. So I see the reflection of these authors carrying on these traditions and also questioning the morals of the gods. So I'll read it. And Dead Sea Scrolls, Psalms 82, this is. Elohim stands in the divine assembly. He renders judgment among the Elohim, or the gods. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you are Elohim, or gods, and all of you are the sons of El Elyon. But you will die like mortals and fall like any prince. And then the author's written here, arise, O Elohim, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. So he's saying basically for all nations return back to El. But I've noticed here that the die like mortals, I think that's honestly a reflection that these gods would be abandoned, not be worshipped and be forgotten. That's die like any human that's been forgotten. I kind of wonder if, that's also reflected in any Sumerian tales.
A lot of it is. I mean, and that's how, because look at Marduk. Marduk becomes all the gods. 50 names of Marduk. The Enuma Elish, he's the one. His story carries over. He actually becomes the Anu, Enki, Enlil, I guess, because he's supposed to be all powerful, right? He's the only god, but see, this is the thing. I have to ask you, and this is what I look into mostly now. The text that you just read, what time frame is that from?
That would be definitely Second Temple period, but that would be probably around, because that text would probably be, because it's the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
Say maybe 100, 200, possibly 300 years before Jesus. So it's the BC era. So some people
BC,
argue
right?
over the Septuagint or not. Some people believe that Dead Sea Scrolls are older. Some people believe the Septuagint is. I reckon it's a bit of a mix. So because the Septuagint has been added to, the Dead Sea Scrolls have also been added to.
Yeah.
So they're both reflections being copied from even older text. So Dead Sea Scrolls are from most likely quoting from older text, being an outcasted community that would worship El Elyon compared to the newer communities of Yahweh that were usurping the temple practices.
Yeah.
So I'd say maybe, if I was going to guess, 300 years, I'd say, possibly.
I just recently watched a video that floating through my newsfeed on the internet, not on YouTube or any other platforms, just like regular newsfeed. They did some testings on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they found them to be much older than what they've been previously told.
Okay. Yeah, some of them are. So there's all different dates and so on. Some of them are probably 500 years old. I was actually going to mention, I think I'm wrong on the 300 date, because that text would very likely date from the Babylonian conquest, which would go back even further. So we're going back before the time of Cyrus the Great, who founded the Persian Empire. So that's when the Torah was actually being constructed during that time, during the Babylonian exile and the returning of it. So the reason why I say that is because there was individual text.
I don't remember which verses they were or which books that they were referring to, but a few of the important texts were 2 to 3. I'm going to give it a ballpark, and I'm probably exaggerating on this, but let's just say give up to 500 years. But I believe it was 200 to 300 years older than what was previously told.
Yeah. There are some that are like that. You're right, because they're different communities. They're not just one community, and that's where some scholars fuck up, and especially Christians that don't want to comprehend there's different forms of Judaism, because it means that their modern Christianity is a lie, meaning that there was these different groups of Christians, and they're going to track down which ones are the oldest, and they're not going to like the answer to that, because they're going to find Gnostic Christianity and Jewish Christianity. They're the two oldest groups. So in regarding to that, during the Babylonian conquest, the nobility were exiled, but then you had other ones that weren't exile because they weren't causing trouble to the Babylonians wanting to rise up in exile. So we have people around this time making images of themselves, which was meant to be against Torah. So showing that during the time there wasn't. So there was individual text floating around, which also supports that being the Dead Sea Scrolls being all individual text being written over different periods of time, because you've also got the teacher of righteousness, so Essenes that believe this guy was a Messiah, and then you got ones that are going back older, and you got different communities within this Quran community. So you got some that were taken out by the Romans, and you got ones before the Romans even come into play. So that's why some texts do date back earlier. Some of those texts will date back to the Babylonians and then being exiled out, and so they've gone out into the mountains. So that's why we've got these different dates. And even the Septuagint was added to over the centuries as well. So we have some texts that are missing, and then we have texts being added in there from the 16th century. That's
blasphemy. Blasphemy. Yeah. The good book says thou shalt not add to nor take away. That's blasphemy.
It's funny, isn't it?
So y'all know on Twitter or X, there's a lot of arguments about archaeologists and archaeology and all this other stuff. Everybody's arguing, oh, they don't do their due diligence, and other people are like, oh, they're not doing this. And, there's always these arguments that people come up with, and it gets really annoying. Well, one of my favorite websites is this website right here, Archaeology Magazine. It's archaeologymag.com, and it's an archaeology news online magazine. I guess you can read anything that you want. So what you're talking about, Fear. So 10 days ago, AI reveals Dead Sea Scrolls may be older than previously thought.
Yes, okay? Yes, that's it.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite websites right here. So it comes right here, and it tells you a little bit about it. Of course, it tells you when they found it, and it tells you of the 27 successfully radiocarbon dated showed that although some fragments were more recent than before, much were much older. That's what Nathan was talking about. But then they give you, this thing right here. You probably can't really see it here, but it gives you just basically that. Okay, so it says to advance the process of dating, researchers developed an AI model named Enoch. Okay, I'm going to say this again. This is what it says. It says, to advance the process of dating, researchers developed an AI model named Enoch, referencing the biblical figure who was known for his wisdom and scientific knowledge in Jewish culture. The AI learned to read the fine distinction in handwriting styles from 62 digital images of ink traces on 24 radiocarbon data dated scrolls. Okay. Then it says the AI was then validated using 13 new samples and tested on 135 undated scrolls. In 79% of the cases, paleographic experts deemed the age estimates provided by Enoch realistic. So basically AI, they taught AI how to read it. They programmed, did what they did. and the program is called Enoch. So now you know they have a new program that reads Jewish literature, or the Dead Sea Scrolls at least. They call it Enoch, right? And they give you the A, B, so they gives you the binary, the training, and the radiocarbon and all this other stuff, and it predicts and it gives you this little thing right here. Then it gives you, a glimpse of the Dead Sea Scrolls right here. Of course, you can see that. And it says the research also revealed that the types of writing styles, namely Hasmonean and Herodonian scripts, coexisted for a longer period than previously believed. In another surprising case, Enoch dated one of the copies of, I can never say this E word right, I'll always butcher it, but it's ECCLESIS. Yeah, I can never say that. I always mess it up, so I'm not even going to try to say it. But it says to a period consistent with its presumed author, a level of precision that could rewrite scholars' interpretation of the development of Jewish thought during the period. Now, this is what I like to do. I always say this, even though I don't have a college degree in anything, don't even have an associate, and I don't believe that people who have college degrees are better than me, right? Because I read their work, so why would I think they're better than me? They just have a degree that I don't have. So what I like to do is, if we're ever in a space and we're talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, I would tell them about this website, tell them what it says, but then I would also bring up this another website because it tells you, I like to bring up what a lot of people like to argue is, some people will say, well, is there a peer-reviewed article? Well, yes, there is actually a peer-reviewed article. And here it is. Let me bring it up. It's right here. This is the peer-reviewed article from the person that did it. It says, determining by means of paleography the chronology of ancient handwritten manuscripts such as the Dead Sea Scrolls is essential for reconstructing the evolution of ideas. And then it says, in order to explore the viability of the character shape-based dating approach, the trained Enoch model then computed date predictions for 135 non-dated scrolls. So they actually have a peer-review article on this. So anybody who says the Dead Sea Scrolls are older than the date prescribed, or was initially said, there's actually a peer-reviewed article that does that. Okay. It was received in November 21st, 2024, accepted April 3rd, 2025, and it was published June 4th, 2025.
So I also want to mention, because you mentioned already in the writings of it, about telling two different writing systems between the Herodian and Hasmonean dynasties. These two forms they were Jewish sects, by the way, as well, as we had different ones. They were more political. They believed that either, because there were two competing ones, one believed that Hasmonean dynasty would carry on the Messiah, and some believed they were not, or we have no proof at least of any relation to David, so they're not of the house of David, but the Messiah could be just anyone, and they could be seen automatically being of the house of David. So it was either the Herodians or Hasmonean dynasties. So you had two Jewish sects that were supporting both these families, and some that were rebelling against them. Some of the Zealots also rebelled against the Hasmonean and supported the Herodians. They don't talk about that. Some Zealots absolutely hated the Herodians and thus supported the Hasmonean dynasty. Some people even believe there's a possibility Jesus came from the Hasmonean dynasty, which is very interesting. You had all these different sects of Judaism that were fighting each other. That's why you have all these different sects. And even Essenes, there were different communities, and that's why you have different sects, different time periods, different forms of writing between these groups, because you've got different beliefs. You even had this within the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You had different forms of the Sadducee movement. They were having most of the same beliefs. It's just that they supported a different political entity. So, and that's the same with the Pharisees. Some Pharisees believed that either they would have a Messiah of their tradition, or it could be anyone that was chosen by God, and some of them even supported Herod, though not all. So those Pharisees would have been regarded as Herodians. So you had all these different sects again. So this is something that they don't compile. And why you have more knowledge than most Bible fucking scholars, if they're just religious, because they're either withholding information or they actually haven't read any much. They've only excelled in one subject, and thus they don't know anything outside the Bible. They rely on an English text. They haven't bothered looking at any Jewish words. They haven't bothered looking at any Greek. They haven't bothered looking at all the different sects, which is where the money knows. It's all well and good to read the language, but unless you know about these different forms of Judaism, it's not going to mean much. You're just going to be confused, or you're just going to be blinded by that site. So that's why you have more knowledge than that person, Tyrone, in regards to someone that claims to have a degree, because they only focus on that one field. And Christian scholarship doesn't mean much unless you're actually studying all those different fields. I have degrees there when I was ordained. That's just ministry. A minister can be anything. Doesn't mean that minister is studying anything outside their Bible, let alone what's being rejected.
Let me see if you guys can hear this. Tell me if you can hear this. Yes, no? No? Damn, man.
Well, you know what? There's probably a chance that even though we can't hear it, the audience can.
Probably, but I'm not even going to stress it. So basically, it says the Aramaic Hebrew script developed in ancient Judea. The result of this study led to 4 novel insights into Aramaic Hebrew script developed during the period under consideration of the date of the individual manuscripts. First 14C date ranges and Enoch style base estimates are overall older than the previous paleographic estimates. These older dates for the scrolls are realistic. And let's see, it says, I'm going to go right here. So it says, so slightly earlier than 150 BC or BCE. So they have a peer-reviewed article for it. So when somebody says that, is it true? They have an Enoch AI model that, translate the ancient text, then yeah, they definitely do. Look at all the references. I mean, it has a lot of references for it too. So you got to read all these references. I mean, they let you read articles on it. Let's see. I'm not even going to click on one. There's so many of them. But yeah, this is what I mean personally about sources. Like, I know what the ancient texts say. I know what somebody might have said based off their translation. But a lot of times, people, and I don't really hold peer-reviewed articles as the know-it-all. And the reason why is because it's basically just people agreeing with each other. I literally have a peer-reviewed article out there. I had one of my articles peer-reviewed, not by just anybody random, by Dr. Keith Cheng, and just to be in particular, the guy that's founder of SLC 2485. So it's just interesting to me that you brought that up, and Fear brought up the fact that they have older scripts out there. None of right now, I was trying to look it up, is to see if the Enoch AI is available to us. It's not available to us right now. And just imagine how much help that would give a whole bunch of people if they had access to that same type of model. You know what I mean? So right now they're able to create the narrative and hold on to a certain narrative because they're the only one that's able to use that AI model. That model cannot go to nobody else, right? Unless they give them permission or somebody hacks it and uses it, right? So that's pretty interesting. And that's why I say a lot, it's so hard to distinguish what's fact over fiction, but we know these gods' characteristics. You was mentioned earlier, Nathan. You said the forms of God, the different forms of God. I think God had different personalities, and he was learning how to be. He had to do human-like things to understand what humans were doing, right? And Yahweh is a different form than El Elyon or Adonai or El, right? Or Elohim, because some people say plural, singular. So the different forms could be the different personalities, the different different levels of growth. The different levels of, like, I'm 41 years old. I'm not the same person I was when I was 21. You know what I mean? Yeah. I grew. I mean, I'm still the basic foundation of me is still there. Yeah, I like to fight. Yeah, I like to argue with people sometimes. It's fun to me. I grew up playing Mortal Kombat. Everything that I grew on was in competition. So I'm a very competitive person. Everything I've ever done was competitive. You know what I mean? And the most important thing was, the most competitive thing I did was my life over somebody else's when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? So all my life has been a competitive type thing. I had to be faster than you. I had to be able to shoot better than you. I had to be able to run better than you. I had to push my body harder than you. I had to be better than you because it meant that my survival, right? So it's for me, I just want to know where I can read what somebody else believes, right? Like if fear, when fear said he's seen the video, I love videos because videos help the people who are don't have time to read. That's what I started off. Before I even started reading all these books, I used to watch videos all the time, bro. Like all the time. Like I used to watch videos so much that's where most of my information came from. A lot. So I used to now I of course I read a lot and stuff like that. So that's why I try to show something. So when somebody says something, I usually 9 times out of 10 what I do is that I always go to the internet because it's a quick source, right? I go there, type in what they said, and I try to find a respectable website, reputable website, and then I try to find a peer-reviewed article on it. A lot of people don't know a lot about these websites, man. Like there's websites. I have a website here. I'll bring it up. This is one of my favorite websites for a lot of stuff. Hold on. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Go ahead.
I use these guys as well from time to time. Same site, Just Or.
My bad, y'all. I was sneezing. My bad.
That's okay. I've used the same website.
Oh, shoot. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to bring up the other one. Here we go. Yeah, this website.
Yeah, it's a good site.
All right, I'm back. All right, man, these allergies coming out of nowhere, bro. I'm telling you, this rain.
Oh, good timing.
All right. It's my eyes are watery right now too. Hold up. I'm about to bring myself back up. But I use this website a lot, man.
Sex, by the way, and the different variations of God. When in regarding to usually new religions, it's usually the combining of oldest ideas or combining of new ideas mixed in together. Jesus himself, this might be difficult for some people to hear, but regarding all these different sects of Judaism, different beliefs, and different philosophies, Jesus mixed them. The idea of Christianity, when it was still regarded as a Jewish sect, was regarded as a heretical, being a heresy Jewish sect. They believed that not only was Jesus Messiah, but he had the correct form of Judaism. So he had the correct faith. So it doesn't matter about so much where it all started. They seen him as God's word being incarnated, sent by with the correct idea of faith. So that was the earliest idea of being a Christian, being a Christanos as well, was to be like Christ yourself, to be anointed. But that was the original belief as well, that he was ultimately God's word. So everyone else didn't really matter. That's one reason why this text was most likely added in. And that's in John 8.10. And Jesus states, all who came before me were laystes and thieves. So again, laystes being rebels, predators, and pirates. So if he did say that, that meaning that all other beliefs were wrong, their beliefs of their prophets were wrong. And I would say that would come back to the Essenes, because Jesus did mention other prophets such as Moses or Abraham even, and Noah. And the thing is with the Essenes, depending on what sect, they had a different version or belief into who Moses, Abraham, and even who Noah was. For instance, some Essenes believed Abraham was completely non-violent, whereas we have the other sects, which is in today's version, was violent. We have Genesis 14.13 in the Septuagint, which is copied from the original text. It doesn't say Abraham the Hebrew, which is a way later term that was added in later, centuries afterwards. So Parate was associated with the Parate River, and that's where the Canaanites and even Jewish people, if you will, at this time, which came from the Canaanites, would go out raiding, taking women, fighting other tribes. Later on, the Muslims would then use this same river for abducting women. So that sect would be derived from the Shashu of Yahweh, which were the mercenaries and raiders, and where the nobility, the more peaceful sects, originally began from Hyksos being El Elyon worship. So even with regarding of Greek Hellenism, which was a big deal on philosophy in the ancient world, Jesus definitely adopted some of it, for sure. A combining of different beliefs and what he learned for his lifetime to bring about a new message. And he was successful. The reason he was killed is because he challenged the old nobility. When you start a new religion, you're not usually killed because you started a new religion. It's because you challenged an old authority. That's when there's trouble. You know. You're on mute again, Tyrone.
Hold on, my eye was freaking itchy. So you a while ago, I wrote this down in my Kindle. You was I wanted to talk about this. There's always arguments about who Jesus is. What color skin he was, who he was. Was he a carpenter or was something else? Did he have brown hair, black hair, or whatever? The bronze of color of his feet and blah blah blah. All these arguments, right? But all I hear is people going away from the fact that all Jesus wanted was people to do right. Literally. He wanted you to forgive, which is a hard thing, right? No, it's really hard to forgive somebody that murdered somebody in your family or took a child from you, right? But Jesus, all he wanted was people to love. And he wanted people to look within to find the loving nature of themselves. Yeah, he, in a way, would talk and speak as if he would question God himself or say that there was something more powerful for them, because he understood that he was only a man, right? He was no better than anybody else. Yes, he could heal people, but it wasn't because he would touch them like he would touch them with their hand and they would get healed. He could touch them by finding out what was wrong with them, right? Like he was almost like a shaman or a doctor in some cases, right? Like he could tell if you had a lot of sores on your hand and you had a lot of mud and dirt on it, then he would tell you might want to start washing your body, right? And your blindness, okay? Your blindness. They have techniques today where it doesn't take great technology to clear out your eyesight, right? And certain foods can help you with that, right? If you're a diabetic and you're eating the wrong foods, that can affect your eyesight. So he would tell them, he would touch them with his words and say, hey, do this other than that, right? I know a lot of people believe that it was all instantaneously and all this other stuff, but it wasn't. It was for certain people. And you have to understand, these people kept it simple, stupid, right? They were still learning a language and creating a written language, right? And perfecting it at that.
Yeah. For healing, right? That you mentioned, and you're correct, because the word that they're using is regarding doctor service, treating someone, taking care of them. So meaning that he spent time with them. 100% right, Tyrone. Yeah,
he stood by their bedside. When others were afraid to go near them, he wasn't.
Yeah.
He risked himself. It was like almost like you remember that movie Outbreak with the monkey? When you had to keep your distance from people if you got too close. He was the person that would go there and heal that person by any means. Did he use precautions? Of course. They said that a person touched his cloak or his linen or whatever, and they were instantly healed. Well, because he was holding on to them, he was holding their hands. And he said, yeah, who touched me? Because there was a lot of people that needed help.
Yeah.
Right? He was surrounded by people that needed help. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is they think they're thinking that it happened that fast. It's not. He spent time with them.
Too. Sometimes there was too many people he had to leave.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. But they're combining these stories.
You only have so much energy and power inside you that you can give off to other people.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that he spent time with them. He was close contact with them. He wasn't, trying to treat somebody from a different room or treat somebody by giving somebody a message. He was like, I'm going to walk in there, see what the person looks like, what they're going through, and, fix it as best as I can. And this is the thing that I always say, is that, like you said earlier, when they say you don't kill somebody because they want to treat. I think I said it right, that you don't want to kill somebody that is trying to start another religion. I might have said it wrong or something like that. He wasn't trying to. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you don't get killed for starting in new religions when you challenge the old authority or start saying they was evil.
Yeah. This is what I wanted to bring up too, is that fact that what was the trash place outside of their location?
Yeah,
Henna. I gave my wife the wrong word the other day. I was trying to think of it and I couldn't remember. Yeah, the trash place, right? It was a trash place that was outside the compound or tribe or whatever, and that was considered hell because you would go there and you would be dirty and dingy and stinky and stuff like that. When I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, we had what they call burn pits, and we would dig a big ass hole in the ground and just throw everything in there and burn it. And when I say everything, I mean everything in there. There's been times when people accidentally threw ammunition in there and this shit would just start firing off, bro. I'm not kidding. I swear to God on my life, bro. They would throw anything in there. Yep. Anything. It was, and now this is what I want. This is what's important. The VA is having a lot of trouble with veterans right now because a lot of us were exposed to those burn pits. And we're getting cancer, sicknesses they can't figure out, illnesses they can't figure out, cancer. Their people's lungs are jacked up. Now, let me remind you, some of the civilians that worked with us, that worked at those burn pits, they were making like, I'm going to say like $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 easy. I'm talking bank money. Money for just being out there 6 months to a year. And now a lot of them got health problems. Was that money worth it? Probably not. And that was considered hell, bro. It was stink over there. I remember I used to have to drive my truck because I used to have a truck. After I got wounded, I was the mail person, right? They didn't want me back in the field like that. They was like, nah, this dude, he's too jacked up, right? Like, if you think I was bad now, man, just imagine being around a whole bunch of soldiers and everybody else.
I want to give you another perspective, Tyrone. That place, Gehenna, when you mentioned the burning pits, well, the Jews usually buried their dead, some Hellenistic Jews did, but when someone was diseased and sick, they knew, they didn't understand it, but what they do is they would seal the tomb. So when tomb robbers come in, and later even archaeologists, they will try to figure out, why is this tomb sealed? It's their treasure. Then they find the body and they examine it with DNA, find out it was diseased.
Yep.
Now you got the Canaanites, then you got later on Romans that were burning. They just burnt all bodies. So that would stink. Disease would carry through. So that's why they realized it was a bad place. Yep. And a lot of those people were being crucified in a lot of cases were also Jews, Jewish rebels that were rebelling against authority, unless they could be paid to retrieve the body. But in some cases, those who rebelled were actually taken off the cross straight away. Someone would pay for the body. And this could change the story of, Joseph, that ghost Arimathea, Joseph of Arimathea, that takes the body. This could also hint at he wasn't a secret follower, though more likely he is. It could also hint at the reason he got away with it by his nobility, which is more likely the story, that he was a follower but did this and he got away from it without being judged by the other Pharisees and Sadducees that wanted Jesus killed, was because the belief was those who were false messiahs, take them off because they believed they kill them themselves, string them up on a tree. So string them up on a cross similar to the Romans. So it would have fit in Jewish law. So Jewish people did also crucify people, just a different form of crucifixion. They crucified false messiahs or ones who, like Jesus, they viewed as false or challenging their system. So they would retrieve the body that day as not to spread corruption or have the body stink, because it was seen as an abomination to God. So that's one reason why he's giving it a tomb. He's honoring Jesus in this sense is different. He could have got away with it saying, look, I've given this one here a tomb out of kindness of my heart. The reason I've taken it is because it would spread evil, basically. He'd get away with it. Yep. So that could change the story, because it was custom to take down those false messiahs the next day. Do not leave it longer, because it was believed to spread evil.
Yep.
So that's a tradition that you don't hear any fucking Christian talk about. They don't know, because they don't read these texts. They don't read these Jewish laws. I challenge all of them to even read the Talmud and understand this is the stuff Jesus was challenging, because it was why they recorded even in Talmud Jesus burning in excrement, because he challenged their God and stole their prostitutes. The prostitutes associate with Jesus as victims of the sex trade that he liberated. Why he states in Matthew, those who harm a child or who cause a child to stumble or who cause that child pain, not just stumbling blocks, it causes a child pain, is the actual more likely authentic text when you look at the fucking Greek. So he's saying whoever harms a child, drown themselves in the river, but not just drown themselves, tie a millstone, a giant rock around their neck. So that's hardcore. So when you put these two together, you're understanding, especially when you're looking at the traditions of temple virgins that were going on. The Talmud records a young boy, not yet of age, is not quite a man yet, not quite human yet. So anyone of a certain age was regarded almost like an animal in a sense, and an animal that, not quite an animal, because even an animal wasn't regarded as an animal by some Jewish elites until it reached a certain age. So they could, horrible, nasty, disgusting shit is recorded in that Talmud. That's what Jesus was challenging. This is what people don't understand. So I'm saying, why do you worship this filthy God? They like if you read John
because they go off of the Bible, bro. Because they don't understand that the Bible,
like Jesus says to the Pharisees, which is the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Herodians, the high priests, so the Jewish elites. He says that you worship your father who's the devil. But the thing is, the Pharisees and Sadducees and Herodians don't believe in the devil. So that means a different sect of Judaism that did believe in this. So that points to Jesus not being of their version of Judaism. This points towards a Gnostic thinking. And this is one reason why some Christian priest today, there's one with curly hair, he's on YouTube, he's an older fella. He gets asked something about the Dead Sea Scrolls. He goes, oh, they're Gnostic. They're not all fucking Gnostic, you know? It's just, they just label anything that's not of their faith as Gnostic, you know, or wrong. They don't understand because they've failed their own history lesson. Even the church fathers started forgetting their own language. And when they were writing the Gospel of Luke, they're stating many have tried. It's under our authority. So it's, or it can translate to a witness, an eyewitness, or someone else's authority. So the Greek language is bloody vast. So you have all these alternative translations. So that also supports different versions of Christians reading those texts differently, and why they had different texts and sharing each other's writings. It wasn't until the 4th century that dogma was fully enforced. Before that, there was some dogma being enforced by the 2nd century, but they were individual scripts. They weren't just one Bible. They were individual scripts. It wasn't until later on they were put into one. So,
that's what I'm saying. They took all the scripts and just placed it in one. And the Protestant Bible is 66 books, and that's what most people go off of. But they don't read the other missing books before that, and the books that were taken out, and all this other stuff. So we was talking about Gehenna. I can't even remember the word that I gave my wife yesterday, but I have to think about it. So it says Gehenna, abode of the damned in the afterlife in Jewish and Christian eschatology, the doctrine of last things, named in the New Testament in Greek form from the Hebrew Gehinnom, meaning valley of Hinnom.
Yeah. Now when you type in something on Google and read it up, if you can, Tyrone, type in on Google Abaddon.
Yeah, but see, I forgot to bring it up. So here it is right here. And it says Gehenna originally was a valley west and south of Jerusalem where children were burnt as sacrifices to the Ammonite god Moloch.
Also Yahweh as well. It won't tell you in there because it's going to be Christian friendly. But yeah, they also burnt to Yahweh because Yahweh also accepted child sacrifice, virgin sacrifice, animals. So he
did. And this practice was carried out by the Israelites during the reigns of King Solomon in the 10th century BC and King Manasseh in the 7th century BC and continue until the Babylonian exile in the 6th
And you just pointed out, Tyrone, that's their secret way of saying the Israelites were doing it too. They're just not going to tell you who are those Israelites worshipping. Some worship Yahweh and others worship Baal because they were brothers. Some believed even Yahweh and Baal were the same God. So that's interesting too. But I want you to type in something even on there. Perfect. Type in Abaddon up top if it has it. I can tell you how to spell it. It's spelled A-B.
A-P.
Yeah, A-B. B.
A-B, okay.
Yeah, D-D-O-N.
Okay.
It might be actually, I think it's meant to have an A.
Abaddon.
Yeah, that's the one. It's also a place. It's also an angel.
Oh, hold on.
But it has older roots than an angel. So an angel's a later term. So, all right, it's also an abyss of hell. So that's a place of divine punishment before hell. So when Jesus is also talking about Gehenna, it could also be symbolic about this place referring to the Essenes. That's more likely reference to, being a place that was seen not just as a place for Roman punishment, but also associated with a place of divine punishment being a place of evil. So it's likely that Jesus probably did believe in a type of hell, but this would have been it. It would have been Abaddon. So not what Christians think, because they've fucked up the translations, removed shit as well. You find this being mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls, a place of torment, separate from Sheol. So you had Sheol where the just and unjust would go, waiting for God's punishment. The worst of the filth went to this place. They got destroyed. Or the ones that were in Sheol also got reincarnated by the way. So depending on the form of Judaism. The just, however, so the chosen ones of God, ones who had a personal spiritual relationship of God, being sons of God, so children of light, followers of the true God, basically, or who understood the law, would be immediately taken up to heaven. So you have different places of the afterlife. Again, also symbolizes different realms. So some people could receive a lesser form of salvation. So Sheol was somewhat like a purgatory in a sense, waiting for punishment or waiting to be granted in heaven. So there was all different sort of beliefs in regarding to that. Something that Christians don't understand either because they don't look at ancient Judaism. But this is interesting. But you might want to go on Wikipedia, for instance, and it'll talk about a place of divine punishment. So here's only going to tell you an angel, but it is also a place of, it's an abyss of suffering.
You talking about Gehenna? You talking about that?
No, this is before Gehenna.
Oh, okay.
So Gehenna's a place. Gehenna's a valley.
Yeah,
so the Abaddon place of suffering is most likely the spiritual realm of Gehenna. Gehenna's the physical.
Yeah, I got you. That's where you get the idea of zombies from on that era.
From Sheol as well. So the resurrection of the dead, basically being lifted up.
Yeah. That's where you get zombies.
But the filth of the filth, being the worst of humanity, go to Abaddon. So that's the hell, basically. So depending on the belief, they either sat there and were purified after torture, or they were just destroyed. Yeah. And Sheol was a place of purgatory. So basically, the ones who just simply followed the law but didn't enact it properly, or maybe who worshipped the wrong gods but not the most supreme God. But because they still honored some of the law, they received a form of salvation. The Jewish people today believe that proselytes, ones who are converted into Judaism, who fully accept Jewish law, are recognized as Jews now, but they're proselyte Jews. So they were once Gentiles. They will receive salvation until the time of judgment. When that's done, no one will be accepted unless they're already a Jew or a proselyte. So that's where that belief would come back from that place of waiting for judgment in Sheol, where the just went to heaven straight away. Now, in Christianity, it was a sin or regarded as a heresy to believe that the soul was immediately transported up to heaven. They had to go through a punishment or a judgment. So that belief, again, is going back to early Gnostic traditions. So those of the insiders, those of the mysteries, those who will enact it. So similar with Jesus stating that there's those who will call out me, Lord, Lord, but not all will be accepted, not all will understand me. So he's stating with this, with the idea of two churches, one that goes within, one that's outside. So the esoteric and exoteric. So here you got the Sheol, the place of the dead where they dwell. So the just and unjust await God's punishment or judgment. So you got different places being mentioned. So this is where they fucked up theology because they haven't looked at these previous places. So the ones that believed in Abaddon, they were Essenes. The Pharisees only believed in this, Sheol, that's it. The Sadducees did not believe in this at all. They believed once you were dead, the soul died. There was no afterlife. So again, we're going to Judaism.
Yep. You're right. Yeah, you're 100% right, bro. That's why I said, man, it's always good for me just to go back to the actual sources and see what it says, because it says right here, the ASV and the RSV uses the transliteration show. So not everybody uses it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right, because they want you to hide, well, they want to hide that theology on purpose. So this is regarded in some churches as seminary secrets. So not made for the public, because the public will up and leave their church or ask their minister too many questions, and their minister doesn't know how to answer them. So they're just lying out their assholes, basically. And that's why you come across some of the words that they've translated wrong. They've done it on purpose. They've hid a translation from you on purpose because they want to hide that theology, or they just cannot accept it. So it's regarded as heresy. No, they can't be wrong. So they can't be right because I've been told this. The whole fucking sources of them is trust me, bro. I actually had a Christian say that to me once. Oh, source, trust me.
Bro, I hate that so fucking much, bro. That
Been
trust
dealing
me,
with a
bro.
lot of that lately.
Man.
Yeah, it's a purpose suppression of knowledge to keep us dumb. Like these politicians that claim to be religious, they're not religious. They're lying out their assholes. They're just pulling this shit on us.
I hate when people say trust me, bro. And you know, I don't say that, and I even bring you the fucking sources. I don't even say trust me. I just say go fucking read the source that I read. I'm about to pull up something else that you was talking about.
They go quiet once you give them that source. They go quiet. They run away.
Nah, they argue with me, bro. They argue with me.
Unfortunately, we've been dealing with that a little bit too close to home lately.
It's not like there were 6 profiles at once, bro, and it's all made up by one person, bro. It's like, damn. But that's the only thing when you talk about this sort of stuff. You will face criticism because people aren't ready to believe that what they're being told is a lie.
People argue with me, bro. I don't know why. I don't know why people argue with me. I don't know why people don't ask me more questions, especially since I show you what I've read. Like I don't, and I have a series of what I've read, so I'm not making anything up. I'm literally reading. Anytime I find something that I believe is weird, I definitely make a point to talk about it. Like right here, the Strong Concordance. Everybody talks about, you know, biblical words and stuff like that. This is one of your best sources when you want to know anything about the biblical text. And this is the sources you're going to get for all of it. So like, so like you was mentioning here, underworld, place to which people descend at death.
Yeah.
That was also known as hell.
Yeah. And
it's also a place where some people believe where zombies were, because
people did believe it was hell. You're right, Tyrone, but not originally the case. It wasn't seen as hell. You know, it was just seen a place of rest where you could also grow or you could devolve. So your punishment was reserved at the time of the end of the world because the soul could grow over time as well and come to ultimate repentance, which is a thing within Judaism too. So, as I said, not all believed in this because some also had the belief of Abaddon. So Abaddon was separate to Sheol. So Sheol's the place of everyone, but the worst of the worst went to Abaddon. Weird, you know? But then you had the Sadducees that didn't believe in any of this. They just believed the soul. And you find this within some texts because, again, the Old Testament's been put together when it's all different sects, not just one form, all different sects jammed into one book. Now it's contradicting. So the Sadducees believed that once the soul went with the body, it turned to dust. When the body turned to dust, the soul went to dust as well. And you find that in the Bible because that was a Sadducee belief. So they didn't believe in angels either. You know, they believed in none of that. They believed almost similar with the Gnostic belief that God was ultimately unknowable to us humans and did not interfere in human affairs. You know, others, Gnostics didn't believe that, obviously. Some Gnostics did believe that fate was all predetermined, like their things. So it's trippy.
Yeah, I love this website, bro.
It's a good one, Bible Hub.
Bible Hub, yeah.
They're very reliable. There are some things that maybe they're a bit iffy on in some translations, but the thing is, because they've given you the original Greek, they are reliable because you can just copy and paste that text, realize that they've given you the wrong word. But unless you know some sort of Greek or recognize it, unless you're trained in theology, you're not going to know it. That's why every Gnostic basically is a scholar in their own right, because they're seeking for a source, they're searching for it, they understand what's been hijacked. And when you understand it's been hijacked and taken, and there's something real there, something original, you can look at that original for yourself, which is good.
Yep. So, like, you could click on like Theos, meant God or God.
Yeah, Theos. Yeah, and also another word is Theo, which is another word for God, and that's usually feminine. Theos is usually masculine, or in other cases, in philosophical terms, both male and female, so being ultimate supreme. So God, again, but being of both masculine and feminine qualities. So being the source of all, most supreme, beyond, and all that sort of stuff. Ineffable in everything. So that's another word of a comprehension of that in philosophical terms. You know, that doesn't have to be the definition. That's just a philosophical term of it, a philosophical definition for one group. Otherwise, it can just refer to gods and gods. But in the Greek tradition, that would most likely come from Athena in a lot of cases with Theo, because she was seen as a goddess of wisdom and war. And a lot of goddesses weren't just associated with fertility. In the oldest traditions, they were also associated with war. So, pretty Interesting.
So I always like to go to. Damn, my thing turned off again. Oh, because my battery.
This is called Elohim being mentioned
Yeah.
as well. I don't like that Jehovah term though, because that Jehovah term didn't arrive until the 16th century.
That's what I said. That's what I always say too. But I'm going to tell you, man, the more I read, bro, that word seems to have been around for a while.
It comes from another word, and it comes from Hiva or whatever it is. It starts with an E, and it's got translated later into the English term, which came about in the 16th century. So that's where it comes from. It does come from older origins. It's just that it was never pronounced Jehovah until that term.
Yeah, that's westernized, bro. That's definitely got to be westernized. And the reason why is because I've read that so many times too, that Jehovah didn't come to a certain point. I actually have a book that.
Yeah, and that's the reason they use it, bro, because what they're doing there, and they're fuckheads. So Bible Hub, if anyone's watching me, I'm going to call you a fuckhead right now for this. Big fuckhead. And I have a good reason to call someone a big fuckhead. They've mixed in the Septuagint, right, 4th century text with 16th century text that should not be fucking there from another complete different translation even. So I've seen them mix in something when they shouldn't be mixing in something. So that's where I give them the fuckhead term. Other than that, they're a beautiful site, and I'm sure they got beautiful people there. But
yeah, I don't understand that either. I'm so confused on that word Jehovah, because I know when Jehovah Witnesses start, I actually wrote an article on that. But everybody says that God's name was also Jehovah. They're
trying to go back to older terms of Jewish theology in a sense. That was where their mess up went. But again, they didn't know about a lot of these other terms. They didn't learn about all these other forms of Judaism. They just went to a modern rabbi and said, "Tell me Judaism."
You know what? Let me see. I want to try something. Let's try this. We're about to close this out anyway.
One thing I do want to mention before I forget, though, the original term where that comes from, whereas I mentioned as Uhuv, it starts with an E. That derives from El Elyon before Yahweh. It's just that the Yahweh priests usurped the title and took it. They took everything. They even made Yahweh Asherah's wife, and that was meant to be his mother. So they just formed some incest shit. So the Yahweh cults were taking everything. They were taking the titles of El Elyon, El Shaddai, which was a title referring to El Elyon and Asherah, the many-breasted one, and has other meanings too. So it's a reference to masculine and feminine. So it's ultimately a reference to fertility. So that's from that co-worship of El and Asherah. So they took that title, Elohim, title for El, being sons of El, being Elohim, the Elohim, sons of God. So that, again, stolen. Israel is named after El, and that term comes from, what's Israel mean? I'm pretty sure it means El has chosen, or El preserves. El preserves is what Israel also means. So that's where that would come from. That's why you always find even the title for God is referenced in El in the oldest text. So,
okay. Well, we'll end it with that. So basically, what it says right here, it says Yahweh, Latinized, later Latinized as Jehovah. So that's where they got. And I knew that. I just, for some reason, that just doesn't jive with. I don't know. I'm kind of.
It comes from an unpronounceable name, and that's because even with El Elyon, that's not really a name; it's a title.
Right. So, yeah. That's what I'm saying.